Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Hokyoji Zen Practice Community's Sunday Talk. We have the pleasure of having our guiding teacher give the talk today. His name is Dokai. I think most people know that. I don't know if Lavi is the right way to pronounce the name of our other participant, but welcome to you too, Lavi. Just a refresher, Dokai started practicing in 1974, and eventually in 1989, he was transmitted by Katagiri Roshi, and he has been living here and being our guiding teacher since 2003. So I'll turn it over to you, Dokai.
Thank you. Is it possible that everyone can hear me okay?
Put your finger up.
Okay. And I also was looking at Lavy, wondering is it IAV, is it Lavi or Levi? So it's okay. I don't have to have an answer, but it might be nice if you're actually there to just either, if you don't want to show your face, just give us a little. From Levy, looks like it's Levy, huh? Thank you, Levy. I'm going to say Levy.
Levi doesn't have a camera.
Oh, okay. That's nice. I mean, that's okay. However, I'm noticing there's only, besides me, 1, 2, 3, 4 people in the assembly today. Was that a thing you couldn't hear very well, Aaron, or was it something else? Okay, nothing about not being able to hear. I think under these conditions, I might like to kind of alter the talk I am giving. I realize it's Memorial Day weekend, and not that I'm complaining that there's only 4 other people in the assembly today. In fact, I'm happy it's me rather than maybe a guest speaker. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. And so I might like to turn this more into a little bit of a discussion rather than a formal Dharma talk today.
In that case, I won't put you as I won't enlarge you as our speaker.
Oh, okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I don't like to be enlarged, even though I'm a pretty small person. Sometimes I wish I were larger, but in any case, not being enlarged is just fine for today. Okay. Well, just I'm wondering, Levi, I wonder if it's Levi. Does Levi have a microphone?
Yes, Levi does.
Does Levi want to say anything about who you are, where you're from, or anything? That would be kind of nice for the rest of us to hear. It's up to you. You can chat and say, no, I'd rather not say anything. That would be a fine answer. That'd be a very good Zen answer. So,
Well, we're not actually sure that Levi is.
some Levi, no Mike.
Oh, Mike, I met Tim Burkett in 1972, says
Oh my
Levi
goodness.
by chat.
That's in 1972. Oh, that must have been at the Minnesota Zen Meditation Center. And that's exactly the same year that I started university. Oh, you met him at University of Minnesota. Okay. That's the year I started practicing at Minnesota Zen. He was in my class. Oh, okay. Great. Well, then, yeah, that's the year I moved to Minnesota and started practicing with Katagiri Roshi. It was over in southeast Minnesota, the Zen Center at that time, 1972. I think that's exactly right. Maybe 1973. And so that's interesting to know. Then, I think what we'll do then today is this. For one thing, I'm down in the Kansas City area. This was where my sister lived, and I know Kyoku, Tim, and Aaron know about this, but my sister died unexpectedly a few weeks ago. So I'm sitting in her apartment right now and basically attending to take care of her things. And so what happened, I was intending to be back at Hokyoji before now. And I was intending to pick up some Dharma material. That is in the form of books or something like that, because I don't have any with me. So I had to create this talk just from my own head and my memory, and not relying on any other scriptures or sayings or talks. And it's always been the case that usually the things I talk from probably were said spontaneously. They weren't, they weren't said from another talk. It's like someone just got up there and talked and somebody recorded them, except maybe from some of Dogen's stuff. But in any event, well, here's something I can talk about. I won't change. I had a dream this morning when I woke up. I had set my alarm for a certain time, and I always have some finishing touches I need to make for a talk. So I set it kind of early, and I woke up, and when it went off, I said, "No, my talk, it's going okay. I don't need as much time as I thought." So I delayed it for an hour, and then I had a last little dream before I woke up, and and I was scheduled to give a Dharma talk at a Zen center, not Hokyoji, somewhere else. And it was a double feature. There was another person giving a talk before me, and then me. And the other person was Kyoku. She was the first person to talk, and then I was going to follow her. And this is no criticism of Kyoku, but she went over her time for a long time during this dream. And this Zen center was very strict about ending their talks, their Sunday talks at a particular time. And so the Ino came up to me and said, "Okay, I'm so sorry, but you need to make your talk really, really short." And so I said, no problem. And so I kind of woke up with a smile on my face thinking, oh, yeah, I can give a short talk today. So thank you, Kyoku, for being in my dream and giving me a little relief. Oh, and then I was kind of wondering, well, why would Kyoku, as opposed to someone else, show up in my dream? And I think this is just, who knows what happens in dreams, but I made this association, whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. But a few weeks ago, Kyoku gave a talk on a sutra from the Nikayas called "What is Born from Those Who Are Near and Dear." And the first thought that occurred to me is that would be what I would talk about today, because having lost my sister, that sutta speaks about not only joy and happiness are born from those who are most dear and near to us, but also a great amount of suffering also can arise from those who are near and dear to us, including in this particular sutra, it was about a mother who lost her child. And I won't go into it too much. We did a few weeks ago, but I felt like, well, Kyoku talked on that a few weeks ago, and maybe that's why she showed up in my dream as giving the first talk, because that's what I would have. It's just an idea, but it's just what kind of vividly occurred to me. So so I have to say, I believe at this point in my life, I'm in about the most challenging situation I've been in Dozen showed up. Probably in at least 20 years. One of those challenges is losing my sister. And while I'm sure maybe several of you have had a loss like that, I think for me, it comes down to she was my last surviving family member. My mother, father, brother, sister have all died. And there's nobody left. There's no nieces, nephews. I have cousins. Maybe about a dozen cousins. And I was her last surviving family member. And we talked about, who do you think's going to die first? We actually started talking about that this year. Her health wasn't so great. And we both agreed probably she would die first. We never know, but she just didn't have the best health. And I was, even though I'm 8 years older. But in the event, so we actually started talking about what we would do if the other died, what our wishes would be. And we didn't write anything down, but we started talking about it. So that was good to do. Well, the other issue, and I'm not going to go into too much about this, is I don't think I'll go into anything else about it. There's just things about Hokyoji that are challenging. They're not anything too difficult. We have a great crew at Hokyoji, a great board, and we'll work through whatever stuff we have to work through to reach where to go where we need to go with that. No, I have no lack of confidence in that. The other thing is I'm the president of a certain organization of Soto Zen priests in the USA, or North America, I should say. And that's created some challenges for me. When I became the president, there was some pushback about, is this going to interfere with your Hokyoji work? I said, I don't think so. I don't think so. And the first few months went by pretty good. No one contacted me, no one phoned me too much. And however, I think that was my, what do you call it, the grace period or honeymoon period. And now things have really started to happen where they need a lot of my attention. And that's been challenging. And now I'm going to say, yeah, it's interfering with my Hokyoji work. Sorry if I give you all the wrong message previously, but yeah, it's taking time now. So that's all going on for me. So the koan I came up with, well, for one thing, in Soto Zen, most of you know, we don't emphasize studying koans so much. However, they really are important, and at least the founder, Dogen Zenji, was very interested in koans. He writes about them all the time in his works. Zen stories, so to speak. And the one that occurred to me, hello, Dozen, good to see you again today. So the one that came up for me, and like I say, I have to work totally from memory. I don't have any Zen books with me at all today, or haven't had, is when the world is crashing you from all sides, what should be done? I've held, I realize I've been holding that koan for a long, long time. I've identified it with it, and you know, it's basically, what do you do when everything's just seems like it's falling apart? I mean, you know, Pema Children has a book called When Things Fall Apart, right? Is that Kyoku or anybody? Do you know? Is it? I haven't actually read it. Okay, Kyoku's going to get it out. I'm not sure. I haven't read it, and I think I have a copy, but when I know part of the title is When Things Fall Apart. So there it is. When
Fall apart, you got it right.
Oh, I got that right. Okay, I got the title right at least.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hello there, Heartman. Hello, Heartman. Good to see you. So, so the answer, you want to probably know the answer that the Zen, now this, to this question. And this was in Shobo Genzo. I don't remember which chapter. But the koan I'm talking about right now, Heartman, is when the world is crashing in on you from all sides, what should be done? And Heartman's probably heard me talk about this like 25 times, because I always usually bring it up during a session. And there's two, hopefully I'll remember that there's another aspect of this that I want to talk about. But the answer is, in this particular case, that the Zen teacher gave was, don't try to control it. And so, whenever we say something in Zen, it's only one side. It's always one side of things. There's always another side. But so anyway, just keep that in mind. This is an answer to this particular person who asked the question. And that was the Zen teacher's response. It reminds me of in one of Katagiri Roshi's books, I believe it probably was, well, I don't know if it was either Returning to Silence or You Have to Say Something. But he said, somewhere he said, when you are, I don't think this is a direct quote, but when you are shoved in a corner and can't move an inch, what do you do? And this is, I believe, almost the same theme. And I don't remember what he said, but all I know is he treated that as something really good. It seems like it's horrible, a horrible situation. You're shoved in a corner and you can't move an inch. So that's good practice. That's a good place to be when you're practicing Zen. And like I say, it's just one side of something. And to say something more about that, probably most of you know, that his first book was titled Returning to Silence, which means a common theme that you would hear Katagiri Roshi say almost every talk in some way or another. He said, just sit down and shut up. So that was almost some version of that. And particularly sometimes during session, he would say that. He also would say things like, if you don't understand what I'm saying, just forget about it. So anyway, we have that. So that's the part of returning to silence. We just return back, and what is there really to say about living in this world? What can we say? And really, well, not too much, really. Because everything we say is just about one side of things, and there's always can be the other thing. That's the limit of language. And a metaphor that's used is like a leaf falling. When it's falling, you can see one side, but you can't see the other side. And then it changes, and then you see that side, but not the other side. And that's the limit of language and human perception. So that's one book, Returning to Silence. The next book was You Have to Say Something. Okay, so it's like, okay, I got to sit down. I got to say something. It can be totally wrong or all messed up, but I got to say something. And I think that, this is really the function of art, be it music, poetry, dance, writing fiction, novels. You're using a structure. Each of these things have a structure. But they're trying to propel us beyond something that we understand right now. At least the artist is. And so I was in Ecuador a couple months ago, and I was in a place. Ecuador has 1,600 species of birds. It's about the size of the state of Colorado. And all of North America has about 2,000 species of birds. That's to say there's a high concentration in effect of different kinds of birds in Ecuador that doesn't exist in all of North America. And one thing that probably the most profound event in my trip, it was about a 5-week trip, was I was traveling to this place called Mindo, which in itself has about 600 species of birds. But in driving there, I rented a private car, and we went through this area of protected forests in which it's never been cut. It's been no logging. And it was like the most, it just struck me the profundity of this. What is this like what the world was like before we started cutting down trees and using them? Because it was just like of course Ecuador's on the equator, so it doesn't get too hot. It doesn't, well, it does get hot, but it's a moderate climate and there's lots of rain. So it's perfect for vegetation and insects, everything else that goes with it, and birds. Birds and insects go together, and so do trees. So I I only know a little bit of Spanish, but I was able to talk with the drivers. As I could say something like, "Esta árbol nunca cortar," which means these trees never been cut. He said, "No, señor, no, nunca, never." And I could understand enough to say it was protected now and no one can cut there. So they're recognizing that as a profound resource just to look at, not to cut down or disturb. So, and it really affected me. And I thought of Hokyoji. I know Dwayne, our land person, manager, I don't quite know what the title is right now, but anyway, I think he's told me, is this true, Carl, that there's some part of Hokyoji that's never been cut before? Is that true? Have you ever heard that from him? Or
and I think the very tops of some of the ridges where those giant oaks and hickories are, I think Dwayne said that may not have ever been logged.
Yeah. So I definitely want to take a walk up there. I haven't been up there for years, so, and just look at it again. So anyway, I was in this place where there was all this just beautiful, many birds, plants, and trees. And I started rereading the Overstory. Have any of you read that book, Overstory, by Richard Powers? It was recommended to me by two people. One, my best buddy, who's an avid reader, who said it was one of the most, one of the best books he's ever read. And also by one of my students, Mark Anderson, yeah, who also said arguably one of the best novels ever written. So he was the first person. I bought it after he recommended it. And there's this line I was reading there. I'd like to share it with you that stopped me, totally stopped me. Now, say there's limits to language, but this person, if there's someone who can use the English language in like the most powerful way that you can, I believe this person is one of them. But here's just a little line he said, 2 sentences, and they stopped me when I was reading them. It says, "There is no knowing for a fact," and for a fact is in italics. "The only dependable things are humility and looking." So that struck me as a very Zen thing to say. And
can you read that again?
Sure. "There is no knowing for a fact. The only dependable things are humility and looking." That seems like our Zen practice to me. Now we're very, we feel very good when we can know something for a fact. But really, if we examine that, well, how factual is it really? I mean, I'm not going to go into detail. You just let your imaginations roll with that. And but I did well, I'll go into this story. I wasn't planning to tell it, but I guess I will. I got interested in physics. I wanted to know more about physics. About, well, when I was about my mid-40s. And because I wanted to know things. And it felt like physics is the thing that's going to tell me things, which I would like to know right now. But then I said, well, study physics, you got to study math. And I didn't do so well in high school with math. I had to stop when I was a junior after second year algebra because I worked really, really hard in that course and I got a C. It's the first C I ever got. Other grades were higher. And I said, well, math is something that just gets more difficult as you go on. So I'm done. So I quit studying math. I didn't go on to whatever the next one was. I think it was trigonometry. But anyway. But I started again and I actually, at 45, and I actually started excelling at math. And so anyway, I made it through calculus, all the way through calculus. Did pretty good, but by the time I was finishing calculus, I wasn't getting A's anymore on my tests, mainly B's. But anyway, the main point is then I headed into physics and I made it through my first semester in physics. Okay. And then we started getting into the stuff that I really wanted to know about, which was starting electromagnetism, the more subtle stuff. It was second semester physics of calculus-based physics. And then the thing I read, and this really struck me, is that they said, actually, there's nothing we know about electromagnetism. This was like the introduction to this whole second semester. And I said, what? And then it went further down, and the next thing it was long. It was just a page long, but the next thing it said, it's just like gravity. We don't know why it's there. All we can do is just know its behavior. That's all. This is what happens under these conditions, but we don't know why. And it's the same thing with electromagnetism. And I kind of stopped me and said, what? It took me 3 years to go through all the math stuff. And I'm coming down this, and now I'm finding out there's really nothing you can know. And so it was kind of a surprise. But then I thought, well, okay, I'll still keep going. And I actually did not make it through that semester. Other things came up, and it did start to get really hard to understand. So anyway, let's go to the second sentence there. And it's like the only thing that's dependable is humility and looking. So humility is, I think, to not let our egos, right. We just look without investing our own ego consciousness into something of how we think it is. We just look with humility. I guess that's all I'll say about that right now. Okay. Let me go on to another koan that I think is a similar theme. It says, when all the messengers arrive in the courtyard all at once, what should be done? Now this one, I know who said it. It was it's Zen master in Japanese is called Joshu. In Chinese, it's Chow Chow, something like that. And the answer was, do not call out to them by name. Now that's a little more poetic, I think, than the first one. But I think it's the same principle. And again, this is just one side, but it's exactly the opposite of what we are inclined to do. Just like the first one, when the world is crashing in on us, from all sides, what should be done? And the answer was, do not try to control it. Well, our natural inclination is try to control this thing. That's what we want to do. Okay. This is unsteady, it's confusing, whatever, and I have to get it under control. But the teacher's response was, do not try to do that, which is coming at it from a different angle. And it's the same thing with these, when all the messengers arrive in the courtyard all at once, what should be done? Do not call out to them by name. Now, this is something I'd like to discuss with you a little more, because I think there's another side to that too. And I'll just mention it for now, that there's also this thing called naming, that particularly, I think, in the Vipassana tradition, when you start doing meditation, they say, well, name things that are coming up. Oh, this is anger arising. This is confusion. This is that. This is the other thing. So it's a different side of things. And there's also another side of naming where, particularly if there's some kind of unethical behavior going on, we have to name it. We have to call it out. So those are two sides of things. But I would like to, and before I started up for discussion, I'm not about at that time. Oh, I am. I passed that time. Jeez, maybe my short lecture is not turning out to be so short. Okay, so I'm going to just mention another aspect of where I think these two koans, I think, can point to when we're experiencing tragic circumstances in our life, things that are totally out of our control. We're out of control, and we don't know what to do. But there's another place we can practice this when there's not tragedy happening, and that would be doing Zazen. Let's look at this let's just look at one of them. Like, when all the messengers arrive in the courtyard all at once, what should be done? Do not call out to them by name. Isn't that what happens when we're doing Zazen? I mean, I don't know about you, but I get a lot of messengers coming during a part of Zazen. And, and I think real Zazen is when we stop naming those messengers. They just come, and we don't linger with them. We don't name them. We don't draw out the story. And then we start to really understand what real Zazen is. And it's really good to practice Zazen in kind of a daily life circumstances, not wait till some tragedy has occurred. I mean, actual tragedy occurred in our life, and then start. Do it at a time when we're not living. It's just ordinary circumstances, ordinary day. And we can see all these messengers coming at us all the time, particularly during Zazen. So I would encourage us all to look at that phenomenon, because we all sit Zazen here. I think, well, I don't know about Levi, but I know the rest of you do. So anyway, I think I'll just stop there. I mean, I've actually gone to 10:10. And bring this up for discussion. So So I'd like to ask you particularly about this last one. When all the messages arrive in the courtyard all at once, what should be done? So what is your thoughts about that? Tim.
Hey, Dokai. So, yeah, you had two versions of that. The other one being when everything's crashing at you all at once, kind of similar versions of the same. And going back to the answer on the first one, don't try and control things. And I think that's what happens where it gets overwhelming when it's all at once, because let's say right now, got charged 3 months for something on LegalZoom that I did never signed up for. They said they were going to give me a refund, and they have not. So I need to phone them again with the screenshot. Okay. Now there's someone at work who thinks that I never want to unload the equipment off the truck. Shall I ignore that? Shall I address it with them? Shall I go to management? Okay, so that's the second thing. Some poisonous weed in the yard that's starting to take over. Going to take an entire afternoon really to address it. I need to figure out a time to do that and still not feel overwhelmed myself, like all I do is work. Okay, so there's that. So then there's maybe a Zoom call that's going to happen with someone who's difficult. Okay, so do I say things, not say things? And then let's just throw in some make-believe stuff. Let's say I'm being sued by someone. Okay, so what lawyer, what do I do? How do I, what, all the different things. And then let's throw in something else. A family member passed away and their estate and all that type of stuff. And each of these things your mind wants to control and come up with a plan. But when there's like 6 or 7 of them, your mind can't really navigate all the plans, or constantly hops from one plan to the other plan, back to different plans. And it's like a never-ending mental task that your mind is trying to fix by solving all the problems. When some of them are going to drag on for months, and some of them, and a lot of it is your mind spinning and thinking. I have found recently 2 things to help me with that urge to control. One of them, rose out of a discussion that you and I had 3-4 months ago, Dokai, that all this obsessive, my mind trying to, I'm going to say this here, and if this is said here, I'm going to do this, and if this happens, I'll do this. That you mentioned to try and change that obsessive role-playing, at least into role-playing my equanimity. That when I'm putting myself in these fake situations, imagined situations that are going to happen, they're not all fake. I will be having blah, blah, blah is going to happen. I will be meeting with the LegalZoom people, and they are going to try and tell me that they are not going to give me a refund, even though they told me, and, to role play my equanimity rather than the arguments I'm going to give to show that they need to give me my refund. And the other thing, there's 2 phrases that when I was a teenager, I painted, and I did it using just, I'm not an artist, so I used it with that template where it just outlines the letters. So I drew the letters onto the thing, and I painted one color, the background, and then the letters I painted another color. So very unsophisticated. And one of them, actually, this one was done as an art project by my stepdaughter at school. She needed something to do calligraphy with, but that one, good is awful. Actually, that's, never mind. The one that I did with the ordinary stuff is with just the paint and the is Zen practice is to become an ordinary person. And I've had it up for a while, but I want to switch and find the other one I did as a teenager or 20-year-old. And I can't find it, but it's in my mind. And that once is, okay, now it's really bad if I'm going to forget this here, because I was thinking about it the whole time you were talking. Mind directly itself is the way. And that's probably said like 200 different ways in Zen. There's probably 200 different sayings. But that one I have found resonates with me when I start to spin about I'm going to fix some problem or what I'm going to say, in a certain situation. If they say this, I'll say this. If they say that, I'll say that. Is this phrase, mind directly itself is the way, kind of centers me that the solution to my suffering is not fixing the problem or getting the other person to see they're wrong or to get rid of the stress of a particular lawsuit or whatever. It's my mind is at the center. But for whatever reason, that phrase calms me. There's other sayings similar that don't calm me at all. But I found that one I've used, and I think it deadens the impulse to try and control things, which goes back to that first answer. Stop trying to control things.
Right.
That's it.
A couple of comments. Number one is when I'm thinking about this, when the world is crashing in, I don't try to control it. Well, that doesn't mean, if something, like I say, there's always another side. So it's like, okay, if some tragedy is happening, that doesn't mean you don't call 911, like I say, there's just two sides, and your lawn is getting infected by something, then well, we have to do something. But there is this other aspect of just obsessively trying to control. You just get out there and do what you have to do. This comes back to one of those famous Buddhist sayings is too about the first arrow, the second, the third, and the fourth, whatever. Believe me, in the first arrow might be, okay, the shock of my sister dying unexpectedly, but I probably put in 20 more arrows afterwards, at least. Just adding them on that probably weren't necessary, but I do it anyway. And when you were saying about if this person says this, then I'll say that. They say that, I'll say that. Kind of planning it out. It threw me back to the first time I ever tried to ask a girl out for a date. When I was like, I don't know how old I was, 15 or something, and I actually wrote down, if she says this, I'll say that. If she says this, I'll say that. And I had and I thought, I even went over it with my best buddy, okay, what about it? And lo and behold, I actually did make the phone call. I mean, this is quite a traumatic situation when you're dealing with this. And lo and behold, she said something I didn't expect. and I didn't know what to say. So anyway, and she refused to go out with me. So anyway, but anyway, it did throw me back, and I don't ever think I ever tried to do that again. Try to plan out, what's something. So that I learned early on that doesn't work so well. So in any event, so those are the two things. I'd like to ask if anyone else has something to say, either to address Tim's comments or mine? And Levi, you can type something if you want. It's up to you. Yes, Hartman.
Yeah, one thing, talking about you have a lot of issues staring you in the face, or all the messengers arrive at the same time. What are you going to do? You know, back in 12-step groups, the advice that was given out, if you have a bunch of issues in front of you, don't look at them in a row where they're all staring you in the face. Put them in a column where you see the first one and you can deal with the first one. And then the second one pops up and you deal with the second one. And the third one pops up and you deal with the third one. You know, all the messengers arrive. Well, get in a row and I'll talk to you one at a time, you know, something like that, instead of all at the same time. And that's always been, you know, one of those pieces of sage advice that you get in 12-step groups. So anyway, that's something that's always stuck with me. But you know, still a little daunting, but it's all coming at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I have a really hard time dealing with more than one problem at a time. You know, if there's 2 of them or 3 of them or 50 of them in a row, it's like I'm overwhelmed by it. But I take the first one and deal with it. And yeah, I'm gonna go to Levi, who typed something there, but I'm having trouble to seeing a chat.
I'll read it.
Find a place of profound stillness, then deal with the difficulties, distractions, and messages from that. That sounds good. Thank you for that comment. I think the big problem is first find that place of profound stillness. That's the biggest challenge. But you're right. Okay, Tim.
I'm just going to add to Carl's comment. Teresa in the spring often starts getting very overwhelmed with the garden. Everything's coming up and there's different things and she's got different, and I will listen to her and she will talk about all the different things that need to happen in the next month as if they all need to happen in the next 2 days. So I will remind her, you're trying to take care of it is actually spread out over some period of time. So kind of like Carl says, they are actually sometimes coming in a column. You just put them out all in a row.
Anyone else?
In the South, we call it you whack the alligator closest to the boat.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't heard that expression, not in Minnesota. You whack the alligator closest to the boat. Yeah, that's yeah. That's good advice. Good advice. Kyoku.
I was struck by the word that you used, Tim. You said at one point, never mind. I thought, that's really a profound expression. And I find it applicable in my own life that there'll be this moment. I remember coming out of a hospital, realizing that I needed to actually find my car. I had just seen my mother after she'd had a car accident. And I heard the phrase in my mind, I can't bear this. And because of my Zen practice, although I didn't, it's not like that occurred to me. It was just something really triggered me to just stop. And I found myself asking the question, is that really true? And so what I, and this is how I think, just the universe works. So it occurred to me, I thought, let's just try an in-breath. And I did. And afterwards, so I'm standing there on the sidewalk. Fortunately, it wasn't a busy time. I could do that. It was in the sunshine. I'd just taken an in-breath and, of course, an out-breath. And I just thought, well, that's nothing bad happened to me in that in-breath. So I think that never mind. I mean, I can hear it as never mind. That'll always be confusing, which of course isn't entirely true, but it is sometimes a useful perspective. Or this coming back to I'm now more able, because of Zen practice, to recognize that I'm not actually here, and that I can just come back to this moment, and it's just this moment. It's never anything but just this moment, and that's just very grounding. It's amazing, really, how quickly and like you were talking about your Teresa, how quickly I can get myself running around in some sort of a mental circle or physical circle. So it's the one of the things you talked about, Dokai, was a piece that I like from Katagiri, that's entitled "When You Can't Move an Inch," and this is in the "You Have to Do Something" book. And in the very first paragraph, he ends it with, "The question we must ask is, how can we take care of whatever's happening right now?" And that's a really nice question. That's a really, because there's not a doing and there's not a non-doing. There's just a good, helpful, calming question.
Thank you. Yeah, my problem is that sometimes I get so anxious when things are crashing in that I actually can't focus. I can't do anything. So he says how to take care. This means, okay, kind of breathe in, like Levi said, find some kind of stillness right in this moment, and then just start taking care step by step, no matter. I always, a common thought for me too is, I just want this to be over with, be done with it. But that doesn't help it get done, that thought. So in any event, I also thought, when you were saying I was just coming out of the hospital, I kind of regressed. Some of you know I've had like 8 surgeries in the past 3 or 4 years. And one of the most, this might seem a little odd, but it's like, I love this feeling of going into surgery. It's like, there's like 25 people around you just taking care of you. Are you okay? They ask you like every, okay. So, oh yeah, I'm doing fine. Plus they give you some really nice drugs to like calm you down. So that's good. But it's just like, everyone's just taking care of you so well. Now, not, it's kind of expensive, but anyway, it's kind of this. Now, coming out isn't quite the same, but going into it where all these people are just attending to you so carefully. And sir, I'm just gonna put this IV in your arm. It'll just stick for a little bit, but it'll be okay. It's just all this comfort. Yeah. Let me check. Oh, we're at our last minute. Aaron, do you have any final comment or anything you'd like to say?
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. Maybe I'll chew on it for a while, and when we have more than a minute, I'll bring it back. Okay. No, it's very thought-provoking, though. Thank you.
If you want to take a minute or two, we can go over it.
Well, I guess the juxtaposition of those 2 stories, the second one about the ministers don't call to them by name. Mm-hmm. I guess you don't have to assume they're necessarily bringing bad news. I guess maybe they might, but I guess what I was thinking of was the story. You told a story in one of your recent talks about a baby, and when you're so fresh and new, like everything comes in, but you haven't figured out, like, oh, this is this thing, and like giving them names. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking of sensory stuff, and when you get sensory stuff, if you choose not to interact, like call them by name to make a connection or interact with them, could be just a sort of that feeling of being a baby and not sort of interacting one by one. And so that's why, that's about as far as I got before I just said, I'll have to think about it. But, I don't know. That's all I got. I'm sorry.
Well, even as adults, when I was looking out over this forest of never cut stuff, trees, it's like I'm not seeing it as a forest or calling it as a forest or even trees. It's just something you're seeing that doesn't have a name. Really, at least if you start naming it, it's going to somehow decrease, it's going to limit the experience, but you can't, and it's the same with Zazen, I think. So anyway, we can practice with that. Thank you for joining us. For one last time, Levi, I'm going to ask you, yes or no, am I pronouncing your name right? Would it be Levi? Someone check the chat.
Nothing yet.
Is it yes?
Levi, but no need to worry.
Okay. So I guess it is Levi. Okay. All right. Okay, everyone. Thank you for attending and listening to me.
All right.
Oh, yeah. We need to close.
Oh, just a few announcements. First of all, thank you very much for being our speaker discussion leader this morning, especially without aid of your usual methods. That's always kind of pushes you into a different place, doesn't it? So thank you, Dokai. Upcoming is a talk by Onryu Kennedy, who's going to be with us next Sunday. Right now, we're in the process of completing a week of just sitting, which is the title of a group that does a very simple style of Zazen without a lot of bells and whistles. So we're going to be escorting them out, but next week we'll have, starting on Thursday, the True Heart Women's Retreat. Then we'll have a Loring group, which is much like the Just Sitting group. Then we'll have the Wim Hof people who will sit around in ice cubes and see what happens. And we'll have, I think at this point, we're not sure that we're going to have a caring for a land. We have a unusual kind of exciting event where we're going to get to hook up and hear from the Ajo McMullen, who is a Buddhist teacher who established a place in a center in Oregon, in Eugene, Oregon. He's spent a lot of time both living in, practicing, and practicing in Japan. Is very, what do you say when you're very familiar with a foreign language? Whatever that is, he's that. And he's going to come and give us a talk entitled, "What is Intimately Transmitted Between East and West?" And he's going to be coming with a man named Dokkan, who is Japanese and who is working for the Association of Soto Zen Buddhists, not to be confused with the Soto Zen Buddhist Association, which Dokai is the chairman for. Anyway, he is wanting to strengthen and enrich the connections between Japan and US in a Buddhist context. So he's going to come to Hokyoji. We hope that we can get Ryumanji to join us. He's giving this talk also in the Twin Cities, I think during the middle of June. So we'll be sending out something that's happening on the June 20th, which is actually a Tuesday, by Zoom. So you'll have a chance to hear something a little bit different. All right. So having said that, In your chat box is the method by which, if you'd like to make a donation to the ongoing Hokyoji Zen practice community, we need all of them. We appreciate all of them. And you can use the link there to do that. Having said that, I think we can end with our 3 vows and a bell. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Safe travel and play and living during Memorial Weekend. See you soon again, we hope.
Thanks, y'all.